What's your "that's when the bully left me alone" story? I invited a kid who was bullying me round to my house when I was 9/10. Anyway, we were playing together and then he just looks at me and says, "You tomcated, I'm sorry for bullying you at school. I really shouldn't and I won't anymore." And then BSP. That's pretty sweet for a 9/10-year-old if you ask me. Sounds like he just needed a friend. Wasn't me, but some kid at my middle school got rid of his bullies by stripping down naked and start chasing them around the yard. That'd just make me pursue harder. Some kid bullied me into doing his homework in 7th grade. I did it once out of fear, but shortly after that when he tried to force me again, I told him to meet me in the bathroom so I could give him the homework. I then punched him in the face, and he never bothered me again. Violence is the answer sometimes. I was expecting, so I bought some anthrax from my local ISIS recruitment kiosk in the mall and dumped it in an envelope with his homework after washing it in gasoline. Ha, sure showed him LOL. When I was in elementary school I had to ride the bus to school. We had assigned seats and I was put next to this high school kid, freshman sophomore, for the first part of the route until he would transfer off to another bus going to the high school. He was extremely overweight and a giant douche, emphasis on giant. He would do little bully-like things like make fun of me to get others to laugh at me, hit me with spit words, whatever. Annoying but not the end of the world. One week he decided to start physically bullying me by putting his backpack against me and smashing me as hard and as long as he could against the window every day. It hurt, it was gross and I was tired of his crap. So on that Friday I brought a knife my parents had picked up at an antique store and stashed it in my jacket. Sure enough, he pulled the same stunt where he smashed me with his backpack, but this time I slid the knife into one of the outer pockets without him knowing. I then started a physical fight with him to get the bus driver's attention. She pulled the bus over and came to figure out what the commotion was all about. I then proceeded to claim that he had smashed me against the window and then started hitting me while threatening me with a knife that he had put in one of his backpack pockets. She took his backpack, found the knife, and before I knew it school officials were whisking him away at the transfer stop. I don't know what happened to him or how much trouble he got into, but I never saw him again. Genius. Was expecting that to end up violent. Told this story before, so I'll tell the short version. My friend left me for these kids that harassed bullied me all day long, and he joined in. I'm 5 feet 3 inches, 130 Eichelbs. Group was led by kid half my size, thought he was Mike Tyson, tried to pull his usual crap without his protection, held him down and wailed the crap out of him, had to be pulled off. Group still bullied me, but he left me alone. This sounds so similar to what I have done, like spot on. I was in 3rd grade and a pretty quiet kid. My bully on the bus was an obnoxious 1st grader. He just wanted to torment me every day, physically and verbally, and I was too afraid of getting in trouble to retaliate. Plus he always threatened to tell his sister if I did anything. His sister was a 5th grader, and also rode the bus. I told my dad what was going on, and he said, well, if you can't get him to stop and the driver isn't helping, just fight back. So the next time he started crap, I hit him in the stomach as hard as I could. He cried to his sister, who was basically like, haha, don't be an butthole then. It was pretty sweet. He was never a problem again. Your father and his sister are goddamn pros. I got a transfer at work from one work location to another. At the new location a scummy, wannabe biker started calling me Cupcake. After the 2nd or 3rd time he did so I asked him if he had a family, kids. Why, he asks. I'm just thinking how humiliating it's going to be for you when you have to explain to them that a man named Cupcake beat the ever-loving crap out of you. And that's when he left me alone. Roasted. I was at a summer camp and this kid went after me all the time with BS like stealing my clothes, tripping me, sack tapping me, just constantly screwing with me. At one point I was walking past his top bunk to the bathroom and he kicked me in the face. I fell over, and when he jumped down, I sucker punched him in the stomach and followed it up by grabbing his face and smashing it into the bed frame 4 times, hard, until his nose was gushing blood. Then I went to the bathroom. I have no idea what came over me. I'm not a violent person typically. After that happened, he stopped freaking with me entirely, and most people got really distant from both of us. I didn't go back to that camp. It was a mix of an Office Space type moment where I realized I just didn't give a crap about what they thought, and realizing my height, 6 feet tall female by age 14, was more intimidating than it was something for them to make fun of. I decided I was perfectly happy if nobody liked me after it, walked about 2 inches from their body, looked down, and said very calmly but sternly, "What did you say to me? It never happened again. At least not to my face." I hung out with the other social rejects mostly. They were cooler and much more fun, and I'd realized I could bluff my way out of a real fight just by being confident in my stature. It never happened again. At least not to my face. Yeah, they said it to your chest. I used to get bullied a lot in elementary and middle school. I was always a big kid, one of the biggest in school, but I was a real pushover and was always too afraid to retaliate in large part, and you folks are gonna love this one, because of zero tolerance policies. I was so afraid of getting in trouble that I was never willing to fight back, which only made me a bigger target. And of course the teachers did nothing about this but give me inane advice that only would have made things worse, like just firmly tell them to stop or come get a teacher. Finally in 7th grade, after more than 4 years of this kind of bullying, I'd had enough. I was getting picked on by a kid who was much smaller than me, but for some reason everyone in school thought he was real tough crap. When he challenged me to a fight and I accepted, everyone thought I didn't have a chance. He hit me in the jaw a couple of times but I barely noticed. The kid could barely throw a punch. I grabbed him by the shirt collar, ran him headfirst into a brick wall a couple of times, threw him on the ground and started kicking him in the ribs until a teacher pulled him off of me. By the end I had left the kid in tears in front of most of my other bullies. I got a week of in-school suspension and chewed out by the principal, a couple of the assistant principals, a few of my teachers and my mom, but not my dad. But it was worth it. It put a stop to my bullying, but that actually wasn't the most satisfying part. The most satisfying part was seeing the shock, anger and resentment of my classmates when they saw me so ruthlessly beat the crap out of someone they thought was one of the toughest kids in the school. Some of them tried to claim that I didn't actually win the fight. They tried to invent some stupid rule about how the winner of the fight was whoever used the coolest move, which they all agreed was when the other kids started by uppercutting me, and some tried to play me up as a dangerous psycho, but it never caught on. The message that came through instead was that I was not someone to be fricked with. I really hate how teachers leave the bullies roam free, but when the victim fights back they get punished. Not me, but one of my former middle school students. This kid was the smallest in the class and relentlessly bullied to the point of considering suicide. Now this kid was very proud of these Mexican-styled, pointy-toed cowboy boots. He wore them as often as he could. One day the possibly biggest bully in the school just wouldn't leave him alone. Well, with his short stature and pointy boots he had enough and kicked this bully in the nads. He had to take his day out of school, but conveniently didn't have to make up much work and gained a lot of respect from his peers. You don't mess with a guy that has pointed feet. They started bullying my younger brother. I had an eating disorder and had basically naught for upper body mass, but I walked up to him and punched that prick in his freaking face. Took my football back, threw it in his face 3 times as he walked towards me, bouncing it back with his fat head. Fight was over in about 3 seconds. Teacher showed up quickly. I was a teacher's pet, so he was very much in trouble. Still the only punch I've ever thrown my whole life. I was at soccer camp one summer, must have been 12 or so. This one a shat of a kid, probably about a year older and 6 inches taller than me, was being a dong. For example, came to lunch and all my friends were sitting there. He was among them. As I sat down, he asked me to raise my arm, so I did. Saw that I only had a little bit of armpit hair. I was freaking 12 years old. Guy, gimme a break, and started making fun of me in front of my friends. I shrugged it off because I recognized his balls for what it was. Sat down and ate lunch. No big deal. A couple days later I'm standing in line waiting for something. None of my friends with me. I'm not paying attention to much, when out of nowhere someone says, "Hey, does this hurt?" And before it even registered in my brain, I felt what was the cold, sharp end of a soda can tab, freshly torn from its can, scrape across the back of my neck. I instinctively jabbed my elbow back as hard as I could and felt the blow sink home into his gut. I turned around and it was that same freaking bully kid from the other day. He sank back as I brought my arm to my neck to check for blood. "What the heck, man?" he demanded. I just wanted to know what it felt like. He was standing up tall now, still a few inches taller than me and puffing his chest out. "What the frick do you think it felt like?" I asked him. "Obviously pee. You wanna know? Scrape it across your own neck, dumbass." I stood right up to him, refusing to back down. All anger, no fear, ready to fight this sucker, even if he was bigger. He backed down, not actually thinking I was going to stand up for myself. Little insecure crap. I wish I was this badass when I was 12 years old. Goddamn. Mine is a little more violent. When I was 12ish and 5 feet 0 inches, my cousin was already 6 feet 0 inches. We are both 20 now and he is 6 minutes and 10 seconds. 270 pounds. He was awful to me because of the size difference and just him being a massive butthole. He would call me names, push me down and sit on me, start fights, etc. One day we were in my grandmother's yard playing soccer and he started acting like an butthole. I came up to steal the ball from him and he punched me. What he didn't know was that the Greek goddess Artemis was looking out for me. I kicked the soccer ball as hard as I could and it flew perfectly and slammed into the middle of his face. This overbalanced the big idiot and he stumbled into my grandmother's rose bushes. He then got yelled at for tearing up the bushes. After that his entire attitude towards me changed and now we are civil at least. TL. DR. B cousin got sniped with a soccer ball. Artemis is a goddess, not a god. I'm not good at parties. When I was a freshman, I had PE with a senior football player. One day we're changing out of our gym cloths after class and he says to me, "Hey dude, what would you say if I told you I was gonna put your head in this toilet?" I say, "I would ask if your dad has good dental insurance." He says, "What do you mean?" I say, "Well, you are definitely big enough to put my head you wanna give it a try." He did not. That's sort of my mentality. Even if somebody is fully capable of kicking the crap out of you, just make sure they know it's not gonna be an easy time. I had a bully that would steal my lunch, specifically my drink. So, my friend had the idea that if I just made it unpalatable one day, he would stop. I got a resealable container with a screw off top and filled it with punch, a red liquid with every awful thing I could find in my mother's kitchen, a ton of salt, and some alum powder, Tabasco sauce, crystallized ginger, mustard, etc. The next day, as I was eating my lunch, he showed up again, grabbed my drink and downed the whole thing in one gulp. He took 2 unsteady steps and threw up on the ground. That's when the bully left me alone. There was one where a dude wanked into his milk BC, a bully kept stealing it. Oh god, this was when I was 11 or 12 years old. There was this one classmate who kept harassing me. Started with small things and kept getting worse until he said something about my mother or something. That's when I turned around and tried to smack him in the face. He dodged and then crap got real on the playground. It ended with that he wanted to kick me and kinda tripped while doing it. I stepped back and saw his underwear. With no hesitation, I grabbed his undies and pulled it all the way up, like from the ground up. I dropped him on his face. Teachers came outside to settle the fight, was called to the principal office etc etc. I only said, he said something about my mom. You don't mess with my mom. No detention or punishment. And yay, he left me alone from that point on. I'm behind a computer screen, so I can say whatever I want and you can't do crap about it. Your mom must be a wonderful person for you to love her so much. I finally snapped and punched him repeatedly in the middle of maths class, similar to the scene in A Christmas Story. The teacher separated us and put him on detention, and asked me to maybe not do that again. Awesome teacher. Later that day he apologized and said he never knew I had it in me. He never bothered me again. Backstory, me and, let's call him Jim, have been best friends since I moved to a new city. He was also my first friend in the new city. First year was great, we were friends and our parents grew to be friends and we got pretty close. I don't exactly remember what the details were of the situation starting, but I do know that he would get a little rowdy oftentimes and we would constantly argue and bicker. Well, things really escalated as he would call me names and start harassing me at school. There was even an incident where We were in the same city baseball league. He was threatening to hit me with a baseball since he was a pitcher. One day, after several hours of ridicule and taunting, I was getting a drink of water when suddenly he came up behind me and shoved my face straight into the water fountain. Now I am a pretty passive person, but I was not having it with physical bullying, so I turn around and proceed to beat the living crap out of him. Didn't get bullied anymore and definitely didn't talk anymore. I got suspended because I was the aggressor in the situation. He didn't get in trouble. Frick you, Jim. There was this broken toilet in our school that had a pile of crap where someone used it after it broke. A kid tried to shove my face in it. I gained hidden strength and grabbed him by the collar and belt and threw him headfirst into the turd water. It was like a scene out of a movie. Tommy S. was in butthole, about 2 years older. I joined the military, came back home 2 years later 6 inches taller and a solid 30 more yoked lbs. He didn't recognize me, no one did. At the local watering hole he said I was familiar and asked me name. When I told him he downed his drink and walked out. It felt good. Frick you Tommy, I hope you drown in a sea of gonorrhea. When I was 12, I'd gotten big enough that my bully of a father became too scared to hit me anymore. He knew I would have hit back. Bullies are anyways cowards. I was and still am much smaller than my father. It took a baseball bat to his face until he laid unconscious to get him to stop. They really are all cowards at heart. In grade school, this that would always both me about my weight and weirdness decided it would be fun to take a shot at me. Now, back in those days I was about 5 feet 2 inches and he was 4 minutes and 10 seconds, and I normally was unbudged by his provokes, but after he punched me in the stomach, I had it. As soon as I caught my breath, I stood up and shoved him to the ground. I then proceeded to sit on his chest, which resulted in him having some sort of breathing complication. He left me alone. Alright. A bully in my school, we'll call her V, came from a very well respected family in the town. It was a huge deal to V to keep her image up. Having the perfect family that did no wrong was very important to her. She always bragged about her mother's charity work, her dad's ranch, her spot in the church choir, all the aspects of her perfect life. On the day of our 8th grade graduation, V's family hosted a brunch for all of our class. While there, I went to the bathroom at some point. While I was in there, I stepped on something sharp. It was a needle. What the frick? Why is there a needle on the ground? Whatever. I washed my foot off, threw the needle away and went back to my classmates to enjoy the day. 2 weeks later, we had a BPA, Business Professionals of America, a school program fundraiser for the upcoming school year. Usually, V's mom volunteers to help out with fundraisers, but she was nowhere to be found. Strange, but not a big deal. V and I did have one close mutual friend, R and I were working on cleaning up after the fundraiser when she told me that V's mom was in rehab for the 4th time in 2 years, addict. So school comes in a few months, and V is making fun of my boyfriend, K, for living with his broke brother and not being able to be on the golf team anymore because he had to get a job and help pay bills. K was always shy, not really willing to speak up for himself. So when V said, well, it's not like you'll be missed on the team, you can't even afford good clubs, I looked at her and said sure, K and his brother are poor, sucks for him, but at least his brother isn't a junkie. Her jaw dropped, and although it was only K, R, and I around, I could tell she was extremely after that. She never spoke to or about K and I again. God, high school me could be a B sometimes. When the class found out that I have Asperger's syndrome and that there is a reason why I said and did the stupid things I did, that's when the bullies left me alone. I know so many kids whose parents are afraid to have their children diagnosed with DIS or something similar, but it's one of the best things to happen to me. I'm 22 now, but I had 2 bullies in middle school, boy and girl, that would pick on me and other kids non-stop and even throw things at us during passing periods. Years later I saw them both together getting into a bus with 2 crying babies, miserable and overweight. I felt bad, but I also felt immense joy when our eyes met with recognition of each other and the shame they held. I also later found out they dropped out of high school the minute she got pregnant with their first kid. Misery needs company. It was 7th grade. He was talking crap to me in front of his friends. I slapped him across the face, pushed him down, and basically humiliated him in front of his friends. He was buddy with me after that, and so were his friends. I grew up in a rougher area, and this new school was an upper middle class area with mostly spoiled white kids that try to act black. It wasn't hard putting people in their place because most of them were pussies compared to kids I grew up with. It was in 4th grade that I finally turned to the bully and screamed, "Stop making fun of me, you pathetic freaking piece of crap. Your daddy touches you so you pick on other kids, frick off." Not sure if he had been molested, but he never bullied again. As for an explanation of my colorful language, I kept to myself and behaved, but I knew every word from listening to my parents fight constantly. This guy in my grade bullied me hardcore when we were in 8th 10th grade. He came from a rich crap family, played on the football team, etc. Basically, he was class clown too and thought he could treat people however he wanted. I'd grown used to ignoring him, when one day, he came up behind me on the way out of the cafeteria and grabbed my butt. I tolerated a lot of verbal abuse at that point, but I was not about to tolerate being touched. I had my umbrella in one hand, as I was about to head out into the courtyard and it was raining. I had hot nacho cheese and chips in the other. I spun around, smashed the plastic nacho container into his face, shoved my umbrella into his groin and hit the button to pop it. He did raise his fist, other hand clutching his definitely bruised penis, like he was going to hit me. A sort of friend, who would become a boyfriend years later, that happened to be nearby saw it, hurried by and grabbed his arm and stopped it. He never harassed me after that, though. Hit the button to pop it. Ouch man. In 8th grade, there was this guy in my gym class who must have been left back for at least 2 years. I was a pretty big kid for my age, but he was still like 4 or 5 inches taller than me, built like a linebacker, and dumb as a post. He physically bullied everyone because no one was even close to his size. He liked to walk around the locker room after class and punch everyone in the upper arm really hard, and everyone just took it because no one wanted to deal with the fallout from standing up to him. One day I just snapped and did the unthinkable and punched him in his arm after he punched me. I hit him as hard as I could, but it was like hitting a wall. For a moment he just looked at me like he couldn't believe I had done that. And it started to dawn on me that I really didn't have a follow-up plan, so I stared him down and did my best to look confident. Then he threw a jab at my face that was so fast I was seeing stars before I had time to realize what was happening. There was blood everywhere and it was a minor miracle my nose wasn't broken. Everything after that is kind of a blur, but I didn't get in any trouble for fighting. This was 25 years ago, though he was suspended for a few days. I felt like such a loser. I couldn't tell if the way people were looking at me was because they respected me for standing up to him, or pity for getting my butt kicked, so I assumed it was pity. When he came back from his suspension, he started right back up with the arm punching in the locker room, but as he went down the line he would look at me and then just move on to the next kid. I didn't get punched in the arm for the rest of the year. Of all these stories, I like this the most. Kid in my Boy Scout troop kept harassing me. Started as verbal, then he started shoving me and even threw a chair at me. My dad told me to fight back, so one evening while the troop was on a trip, he threatened to tie me up with a rope and beat me up. A few minutes later, I had him pinned to the ground, face down, pummeling his back. I distinctly remember thinking I wanted to hit him harder, but I couldn't put any more strength into each blow. Once I got pried off of him, I remember hearing him cry and say how much it hurt and that I couldn't give a dang. I wish I could have hurt him more. He actually wanted to become my buddy after that. Alpha as frick. In 8th grade, a kid I'd known my whole life and never had a problem with just started fricking with me. I was a late bloomer, so Marcus outweighed me by 70 pounds and was a good 6 inches taller than I was. I was terrified of him and it got to the point where he was humiliating me on a daily basis. One day in gym class I was leaning against the bleachers and he came over to me, grabbed my shirt, got in my face and started calling me names and talking crap about me. Something deep down in me snapped. I just couldn't take this anymore. I pulled my head back and slammed my forehead into his nose with every ounce of strength I had. He staggered backwards and instantly his face was covered in blood and tears. He ran away with everyone staring in shock. There was 1 month of school left before summer break and I almost crapped myself every time I heard a loud noise. I just knew he was going to kill me, but he never messed with me again. We didn't speak again until the next year, but after that we were friends throughout the rest of high school. I actually have a story, although I doubt it will get seen. Anyway, when I was in middle school I was tiny but had really big boobs, and there was a group of girls that harassed me constantly. Mostly verbal stuff, calling me a S, etc. I am only 4 feet and 11 inches tall and weigh give or take 92 pounds to this day. So back then I was really small. One day I was walking to meet a friend at the movies and these girls were sitting outside the back of the mall. When they saw me they started yelling mean hateful things as usual, and something inside me just shut down. I walked up to the main girl and slammed her face into the cement planter box she was sitting on and walked away, and they never bothered me again. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.